like to introduce our guest speaker today. Denise School is the Emergency Services Coordinator with the Chino Police Department in Chino, California. She has over 10 years of experience in emergency management and with CERT. Denise is a CERT program manager and instructor for her city's program and serves as a CERT volunteer in her community. She is also currently serving as the marketing and website manager for the National CERT Association. Welcome, Denise, and thank you so much for kicking off our 2026 webinar series.
Well, thank you so much for the invite. I'm happy to be here and share what I know, and hopefully all of you on the webinar today will pick up something new. Obviously, AI is something that is a growing hot topic for a lot of us. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and get my presentation up.
Welcome to Using AI to Enhance Your CERT Program. Please welcome Denise School.
So this presentation was a presentation that I had the fortunate ability to present at last year's National CERT Conference. So that's why there's a bit of a racing theme. But like I said earlier, artificial intelligence is only growing. And we need to learn how we can use it as a tool for us to be able to do a variety of things. So this topic is, I'm going to go over a few things regarding artificial intelligence and go from there. But one of the things that you will learn today is how to do some prompting. All right. So for example, one of the things that you'll be able to do is create an image of this dog. This is my dog. Her name is Gidget. And you'll be able to turn her into a human like that. Pretty basic stuff. This was actually one of the first things that I learned to do using ChatGPT, just because of social media and how popular a lot of the things go on social media go viral. So this was one of the first cracks that I got a chance when I was dealing with AI. And if you're a pet lover like I am, feel free to try that and see what happens, what ChatGPT or another AI engine would think your dog would look like, or cat. If you have any questions, as Michael has put in the chat, feel free to ask them at any time. If I'm able to answer them live during the presentation, I'll be happy to do that. If not, we'll take more questions at the end of the presentation. So just a quick overview of some of the things that I'll discuss today. We'll go over a little bit about what AI is. I'm not a subject matter expert when it comes to AI. As Michael said, I am a CERT program manager. I'm an emergency manager here in California. So I'll go over a little brief overview about what AI is. We'll talk about how can you use it in your CERT programs. And then I'll talk more about how do you use prompts if you've never done that before. And we'll talk about limitations and ethics as well to conclude the presentation. If anybody has any experience with AI and would like to share, feel free to share that in the chat. I'll happy to highlight it and again, ask any questions as you need that. So just to get a read of the room, if you have any experience using AI, I would love to see in the chat whether or not you're using it and what platforms you're using. As I'll discuss later in the presentation, there are quite a few ones, the most popular and common one being ChatGPT, but there are quite a few others that I'll introduce during the program. So let's get into it. What is AI? So AI obviously stands for artificial intelligence. It refers to the ability that a computer systems perform tasks that typically require human intelligence, right? So we've seen this a lot in our daily life, whether we notice it or not. I see it a lot more in social media posting. You'll see things on websites for sure. There's a lot of automation, and AI mimics human intelligence. And so The neat thing about AI is that, it can learn. It has developed reasoning models and ways to problem solve. It mimics human intelligence, and it can do it very fast. So a lot of work that could take us as human beings, it might take us a little bit more time and processing power to do, they can do in seconds, if not minutes, to complete complex tasks. And how is that done? It's done through a variety of things. And again, I'm not an AI software engineer or any of that, but the very nitty-gritty basics to it is they're able to take data, large amounts of information, learn, analyze it, and make decisions rather quickly. And how they do that is through a set of algorithms or instructions or rules that are given to them. Just like a search engine uses algorithms to rank websites based on relevance, they are able to, again, AI is using that. And you're seeing AI more and more in everything you do. Even when you do a Google search nowadays, you see Google's AI platform Gemini, and you can actually, it'll summarize some of the questions you ask for it. You can actually turn on the AI for that to synchronize even more so. You can use AI to write emails native in Gmail, for example, and you'll see, again, more and more AI popping everywhere. It's not going away, so we'll just have to learn how to use it, right? So as I mentioned earlier, AI, the machine does learn from all the data that it's presented and populated with. So it uses that data to, again, learn from it, past performances, and essentially it programs itself. The nice thing is you don't have to be a software engineer. You don't have to be someone super technical when it comes to writing complex computer language. It uses our native human language to understand, interpret, and generate. So again, we can easily type in plain language what exactly we're wanting, and it will spit something out. May not get things right on the first try. That's why prompting is so important, and we'll go through how that works later in the presentation. But that is kind of the basics on what AI is and how it works. And again, if there are any questions, feel free to ask in the chat. Looks like those of you who have played around with AI have used it. ChatGPT seems the most popular. I see some Gemini and Copilot, and then it looks like there's a bit more advanced users out here as well. So let's talk about how we can use it to our advantage for CERT. So AI can do a lot of things, more so than what I have on the screen today. These how many do I have here? 4, 7 points are basically what I thought would be more relevant to CERT programs. Now, by all means, AI can do, like I said, it can plan a trip for you. It can give you medical advice. Whether or not you take that, that's on you. It can be your therapist if that's something that you're, want to do. There's so many uses for AI. I won't go into that in big detail, but what can we do when it comes to CERT? So it can help with our presentation slides. It can summarize large forms of data or smaller groups of data. It can help us generate media and images. It can help us create graphics. It can help translate languages. So if we live in communities where there are multi-languages that we're trying to reach, we can translate material into other languages other than English. It can create audio. It can produce videos. The audio that you heard once I launched my presentation was done through AI. So I created my presentation via Canva, and Canva has a lot of AI tools built into it. And so if you're familiar with Canva, Canva is kind of like a graphic design website that a lot of people are using to create presentations, flyers, a lot of other things, graphics, very easy, user-friendly. to use. So these are some of the things that we'll go in details, and I'm going to go into a few examples. But before I do that, I talk about a few popular tools. So as we mentioned earlier, it looks like, most of you are familiar with ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot. Claude is also another one. And they can do a lot of things, but some of the things that they do better more than others is to, develop messaging, create plans, and summarize data. And I will say that out of all the AI tools that I've sampled, ChatGPT is the one that I tend to go back to and use 99% of the time. By all means, it's user preference. And there are some pros and cons to, different ones. ChatGPT just happened to be the first one that I tried, and it's the one that's most popular here in our office. So I'm just used to using that. Now, to create graphics and visuals, ChatGPT and Copilot and Claude can create graphics and visuals, but there are some other AI tools out there that can do it probably better and faster than what those AI engines can do. Canva, Adobe Express, and Napkin AI are all other AI tools that, or have AI tools built into them to create graphics and visuals. I see a question here for ChatGPT attributes ownership of content to the user, so do not need to cite or worry about copyright. Have you run into any issues about that with other AI programs? Good question. I have not, but I haven't played around with a lot of other AI programs to begin with. I also, the way I use AI and I recommend for some of this stuff, like I don't do a lot of writing or anything that would necessarily require copyright. I use it more for brainstorming to get me some ideas and things to get started. So I haven't, creating like images and things. I've used it in sparing ways, but none that I would think that copyright would be an issue. And as you mentioned here, like that attributes the ownership to the owner or the user. So I'm not as familiar, unfortunately, with that. For quick video editing, for social media or to produce videos, there are AI tools like Capwing, Steve AI, Vidu, Hoomba, and Imagine Explainers. Now, I will say a lot of these tools that I'm putting out there, there are more than what's here, and they typically have a free version available that is fairly limiting, especially on the video and graphics pieces to it. Well, I would say more video than visuals. So just know that you can play around with things to see if that's a service that you'd like, and then you can pay for a subscription service. As of right now, I don't use AI. I don't pay for any AI systems. Like I said, I use ChatGPT, and I use its free model. For translation services, Google Translate has long been out there. There are some other AI translation services, such as Otter AI, DeepL, and 11 Labs that allow you to translate text and audio. It allows you to do voice-to-text transcription and narrate audio. So a lot of that stuff is available, to you again, whether it's a subscription model where you pay for that, and they may give you some opportunity to play with things, but they say, hey, if you want the full version or if you want things without copyright symbols on them, then you need to pay. So why AI for CERT? AI, can help save time and is another resource for us. And if you're using the free versions and can get away with using the free versions, right, that's stuff we don't necessarily, we can invest money in other ways. We can use it to boost engagement with our volunteers, through, again, helping it brainstorm a lot of different ideas that you can then implement. It can help you improve training and planning, whether it's asking it to help you craft a template for a standard operating procedure, or create a training calendar. As Michael mentioned, I am CERT program manager and instructor for our program here in Chino, but I live in another city where I used to run that program and currently am a volunteer for that program. And we had a meeting earlier this week, for our training cadre, and one of my fellow volunteers went into one of the AI. I'm not sure which one he used, but ChatGPT is the most popular one, and said create a training calendar for our CERT program. And it spit out topics for each month. He gave it some parameters, right? Oh, not to exceed an hour, include, an agenda, all of those things, and it spit it out pretty quickly. So something that you can do with that. And then AI can also help us enhance our community outreach, partially through, being able to reach other people in other languages, because we can translate our materials into other languages. It can help us in our social media presence, to attract other people to come to our classes or join our teams, by creating visually, audio and visual, stimulating images and videos. So I do have a handout that I know Michael will send out later that kind of summarizes a lot of these things with some of the free tools and the uses and the prompts. But I want to go over here again, how can you use it specifically in CERT? So you can create exercise scenarios, and I'll show a couple examples of these in a few more slides. But you can create exercise scenarios. I'm creative, but sometimes I'm not as creative as I'd like to be, or maybe I have a writer's block. So this is very easy for me to say, hey, based in California, one of our major hazards is earthquakes. So I can say, hey, create a disaster scenario in the city of Chino, based on an earthquake, and type in some more parameters. So we're able to do that. It helps create injects for CERT disaster drills. Again, some of those things are very time consuming, and it helps just give me a quick list to pick from. I don't have to choose everything. I can pick a few things that I like. Helps again with outreach and education, so helping to draft social media posts, helping to translate documents into other languages, helps with creative writing. It can also help you with volunteer and event management. So writing job descriptions, writing standard operating procedures, creating checklists, all those things can be done utilizing AI. And then lastly, it can help with data analysis. So let's say you have a survey and you have a lot of people taking that survey and you want to know the key points. You can put in that data into the AI, and it can summarize key trends and kind of highlight things rather quickly. AI tools. I see a question in the chat about AI tools and accessibilities and usability for screen reader users. That is also a good question. I haven't dabbled into accessibility as much as I would have liked yet in terms of the screen readers. So I do not have an answer really to that in terms of which tools are most accessible and usable. Again, most of the stuff that I do, I don't directly take that product from the AI and use it as my own. I use it as a basis or a foundation to start things. And how do I validate responses from ChatGPT? Good question. A lot of the stuff that I do, some of it I can tell right off the bat that it's not correct. But I also, I don't use it as a Google. That's the other thing. So I don't use it as a search engine for me. Majority of the time, I'm not telling it, can you tell me, such and such law, or ask for certain things for it to pull information off the internet, which obviously it can do. It can summarize a lot of data that it finds on that. But my best tip for that is, in terms of validating responses, is making sure that you check sources. So don't take everything that ChatGPT is 100% true and correct, or any AI platform for that matter. It's great. It's a great tool, but it's not perfect, and no matter how smart it's getting. So I would make sure that you do go through and check some sources, do some of your own research as well before you present that as true and correct. So talking about prompting. So for those of you who have never used AI before, AI uses prompting, or AI prompt writing or engineering. It basically is the process that you type what you want it to do. So it's just asking AI to do something, and that image on the corner there, that was generated through AI. So a lot of what you'll see in my presentation are AI generated images or AI generated products. Um, there. I lost my mouse. Apologies. Screen froze. Oops. Apologies, everyone. My window just died. Exit. I'm going to relaunch my browser. This has happened. Apologies, it's happened a couple times for me lately. So prompting, how do we ask AI to do something? So effective prompts. So again, you can type anything into the chat and it'll take its best stab at whatever you're asking it to do. You can, but to craft an effective prompt, there are some things that you should include. And I've learned this through just practice. And it's learning from me as well. So it's starting to learn what I need from it. But you want to make sure you state a goal, define an audience of who you're talking to, tell it what type of format, because there are different formats that it can produce, whether it's a PDF, whether it's a table, whether it's an Excel spreadsheet, a Word document. It needs some additional information on that. You need to provide it some relative context so it can craft something. So you can't just say, create a CERT exercise. It's not, it'll take a stab at it, but it's going to need more information. And sometimes it will ask you, to provide additional information, or ask you, hey, I can do this. Would you like me to do that? And it'll continue to build off of that. But again, the more context that you give it, the better. And you may need to set constraints or parameters to make sure that you're able to do that. And interesting fact check prompt that John included in the chat. So I will say it takes time to learn how to prompt. I was not very successful in the beginning, and I'm still learning. I will say I don't use all the prompts that I probably could. But I just want to share an example. Earlier in the presentation, I showed how I took my dog Gidget and turned her into human. I thought, well, if ChatGPT can take my dog and turn her into a human, why not see what I would look like as a dog? So I took this image and said, create this image of a human as a dog. And let me show you what I got. That is what I got. Okay, and that wasn't quite what I wanted. I was like, okay, there's the head. That's cute. But I was expecting a full body version of me, right, as a dog. So I then put in another prompt and asked it to uh, regenerate the image. So I just put in the simple prompt of, please make my whole body as a dog, right? And this is what I got. So if you can notice down here at the bottom, all they did was they gave me hands or they gave me paws. And so I just quickly abandoned. I never got to officially get ChatGPT to turn me into a dog, at least a full body dog. So again, prompts like this happen all the time. We don't always know what we're doing. It's okay. You can continue to ask, and you can also feed it information. So the AI engines will pull information from the internet, but for CERT specifically, you can give it the participant manual or the instructor manual, and or the CERT forms, and give it to it specifically so it knows what you're referencing. So you can give it reference material as attachments. So just kind of jumping in there for more examples. So like I said, I've gotten a little bit better with ChatGPT and prompting. So you'll see here the photo on the left is actually my condo. So I asked it to take a photo of this building and create an image of this building as if it incurred moderate damage from an earthquake. And so I generated that image, and the image on the right is what it came up with. Not bad. I can't say with 100% accuracy that that is actually moderate damage in terms of our classification systems. I didn't give it a full USAR, guide on classification in buildings and things like that. But it does provide a visual for, if I were to use this in an exercise and I wanted to create, for example, our CERT basic training final exercise. I don't know about all of you, but our space and our imagination for our final exercise we don't always have the resources that we would like. And so printing out images of buildings that have been damaged based on the scenario for our people to do damage assessments this is one creative way to do that. And you can do that for landmarks and buildings in your community to, again, enhance and localize things for people. So let me show you an example of Connecticut, since many of you guys are in Connecticut, and as the hosts. Michael provided me with a couple of images this morning. And so one of the prompts that I gave it, he wanted to see what it would look like with flooding damage. So again, photo on the left is the photo that he provided me. Photo on the right is what ChatGPT generated. So again, flooding damage, whether it's 100% accurate, maybe not, but it again helps us provide some additional visuals that we can use in when we're crafting scenarios. And for people who don't have vivid imaginations or might not have the ability to visualize it themselves, what that would look like, this could give them some indicators. The nice thing about ChatGPT and some of these AI engines is you can continue to recraft the image. I will say it's rather challenging on some platforms. ChatGPT does a slightly better job, in my opinion, than what I've used for Canva, for example. And I'll show you some of the Canva examples. But before that, let me show you another Connecticut example. So this was a shoreline, again, major flooding. Again, not quite sure if what is in the image is 100% accurate, but you can, again, tell it to try and retool things based on what you'd like to see there. Here's another one from Connecticut, that your state capital. So again, I was given the image on the left, and then on the right, I was asked to see, since you guys are expecting quite a bit of snow this weekend, I believe. So I was asked to include what it would look like with a heavy snowstorm, at least a few feet of snow. As Michael said to me, he thought that the image it generated looked like a Christmas card. So I then took the prompt and asked it to make it look like it had damage from the snowstorm. So again, changing your prompt or adding to your prompt to, again, get your desired results. So now you can see a bit more damage. Again, is it 100% accurate? I wouldn't trust it 100%, but if it's, again, you're trying to get a certain point across about what you think it would look like, this helps, because in the past, you could take an image into Photoshop, and if you knew how to use Photoshop well, you could do some creativeness with that. And although I do dabble in graphic design a bit, I'm not professionally trained, and to try and do something like this would take me hours, days, if I could even do it. And so with ChatGPT or other AI platforms, you can do it rather quickly. And this only took me a couple minutes. So using ChatGPT to analyze data. So again, you can use it to analyze data. What I did was I took some data from the 2024 National CERT Conference post-survey results, and wanted to learn a little bit more about what it was that people said. So it spit out some suggestions for presentations based on people's responses. It highlighted the top 6 things people liked most about the conference and provided areas for improvement. So again, if there's specific things you want to know about that data, you can ask it those specifics, and it'll spit that out. There is a caveat when I go into the limitations and ethics with AI, that you want to be very careful about data that you provide it. Personal identifying information, data that is sensitive to an organization or to yourself, I would not put into AI. Some people are comfortable with that for their own, asking their questions on AI, but that's not something that, again, if you're using this for your CERT program, be very mindful about what information you provide it. All right. DeepL, so that is a different AI platform, and one of its specialties is translation. So it has a lot of different languages that it can translate things to. And the nice thing is it'll take your completed flyer or document, and it will translate everything for you pretty much right away. And you don't have to copy and paste language if that were the case. Now you can see in the DeepL, this is the free version. So the free version provides those watermarks up at the top. And there are some things that I wish it hadn't translated or messed with. But again, if you're doing it on a time crunch, or you don't have the original document that you just want to be able to edit, you can use a tool like DeepL to translate into other languages. And I forgot to mention that what inspired me for this presentation for the conference a year ago was one of our local universities, the University of California, Riverside, has someone who has a passion for AI, and she did a presentation on how to use some of these platforms. And she has a lot of good videos on how to use these platforms. Can you edit in DeepL? I believe you can if you pay for it. If you don't pay for it, then you get what you get, which is what I have here on the screen in terms of, like, you can see up at the top, City of Chino on the right-hand side, and my logo didn't need to be translated, but they translated it and it's not fitting correctly in the bar of the logo. And you can see that there are some spacing issues and things. So you do have more freedom to do things when you have the paid version as opposed to the free version. Yes, and Bob, I totally agree with you. Native speaker double check translations before implementing is still, again, 100% important. Going back to that discussion earlier about validating AI responses with translations, that's exactly it, right? You need to have a native speaker. I will say, like for Spanish, pretty good, at least in our area in California. We have a lot of native speakers. It's easy to validate and check. So that is good. My community has a lot of Chinese speakers as well, Mandarin speakers. And unfortunately, most of us don't speak it. I am half Taiwanese, and so my mom does speak it and can read some of it, but she lives in Northern California, so it's not easy for me to validate when it comes to that. But we do have some people, native speakers, that we've used to validate before we push that out. But I know our communications team for the city, they've been relying more, not necessarily on DeepL, but they've been using a lot of AI tools to do those translations into those languages. But yes, have a native speaker double check. So here's Canva for generating images. I don't like Canva. I like Canva for a lot of things. I don't really care for it as much for images. It does have a lot of flexibility where you can create more of a photo look. You can make it look like more of a graphic. You can do a lot of things, but it doesn't always spit out what I envision. And maybe it's my prompting, but I also think some of it is just the what it can do. Some of the platforms I think have started to put in some of the copyright issues with, like, for example, Disney or anything that's licensed. So if you were to say, hey, turn this into a Disney-like image, it'll tell you, sorry, we can't do that. I did have an issue earlier on. I haven't played with it recently with Canva, that I tried to use CERT, and I think it recognized it as a brand name or something, and it would not generate something with CERT. Obviously, with these images here, I was able to get that to work, and those were generated prior to that. And again, I haven't gone back into Canva to see whether or not it will mess up a little bit. But here's some example of some generated images that were created using Canva. Here's a video that was used to create from Canva, kind of the same thing. Again, you can have it regenerate until you get what you want, or you give up in frustration. And so it will create, like, again, just a GIF, really. It doesn't really do long videos, or at least this particular widget of Canva doesn't. Claude AI. So I mentioned Claude earlier. It's similar to Copilot. It's similar to ChatGPT. You can do a lot of different things. As I was building this presentation, one of the things I wanted to do was kind of explore how that looks and what it can do. So I used Claude AI to create victim cards for an exercise. So what I did was I fed it the CERT Basic Training instructor guide, and told it to create, role player cards for injured persons for the final exercise. I gave them a scenario. I said, I need the victim cards to have X, Y, and Z. So I need to know what the injury is. I need to know what their mental status is. And anything else that could add to the realism of the scenario. So you can see here, it generated a victim card. Here, one of the victim cards it generated gave a person a name, gave them their injuries, what their mental status was, what their vital signs are, and some of the ways that they could act based on that. Again, I use AI a lot of times. I've gotten even more creative with this. I had mentioned to Michael yesterday when we were chatting about this, we did an exercise for city volunteers, and it was a Star Wars themed training. They themed their trainings every year with something popular. And so I used Star Wars characters for victim actors one time. And so again, I use AI more as a brainstorming tool. It can be used in a lot of different ways, but that's kind of my biggest use for AI. But with that, I don't see any other questions. So we're kind of move into limitations and ethics, which is the last part of my presentation. But it's really, again, just AI is becoming more and more popular and a lot easier and accessible to use. But it's important for us that before we really dive into AI, really need to think about a few things. Is AI fair and unbiased? I would say no, right? And so we have to, check that it's learning from information that we are feeding it, and what it's finding. And, it's not always able to validate and fact check. In the future, AI, this is a big discussion. This is not something that really CERT, I think, has to worry so much about, but, how does AI affect jobs? But how does AI affect human decision making? That could be something, more relevant for the CERT world. And, are there risks to relying too much on AI? And we've kind of brought some of that up already in the discussions, right? Not fact checking, not double checking your translations with native speakers, the deep fakes, all of that, the trust that our communities put on us as trusted messengers. We want to be very careful of that relationship that we have with them. So different concerns we have with AI, again, doesn't mean we shouldn't use AI or can't use AI, but there are some things to be aware of. So there are biases in AI systems. There are data privacy concerns. Those are some of the biggest things for me is like when I put the data, as I mentioned earlier, for the post-conference survey, I left out any personal identifying information, program names, persons the names of who took the survey, their email address or phone number, any of that information I took out. And I left just the pure responses to again protect some of that information. And whenever I summarize data, I try to make sure I do that so that way, again, I'm not giving it information that is sensitive. I think so. One of the concerns that was generated was limited creativity, and so yes, it can limit creativity, but it can also enhance it. I think my initial concerns before really jumping into AI was I saw AI as a lot of people were using it as a form of laziness, right? They were like, oh, I can get this task done well without or fast without fact checking, without validating, without really looking at things beforehand. And so before they, said it was true and correct. And so that is kind of was my biggest like hesitation when everyone's like, oh, just put it into AI. Oh, just put it into AI. And I'm like, no, like, we need to really think about how we do things and how we use AI. And as I mentioned earlier, AI is a tool. It's a very powerful tool, and it's a great tool when used correctly. Other limitations or concerns with AI, right? Security threats and hacking and how it protects your data. And one of the big things is the difficulty to get AI to unlearn something that you've taught it. So that's why I say it's very important for you to be careful about what data you feed it, because once you feed it to them, they can't it's very hard for an AI system to unlearn, even if you just say, forget everything I ever told you. It's not that simple. So just be very mindful of what you give AI to learn, because it's very hard for it to unlearn it. It's very complicated, and it's above my pay grade and my knowledge on how to do that. But that is something that I've learned when dealing with AI. And that's pretty much the bulk of my presentation. This is my contact information if you ever need to get a hold of me. I've included my email address for my work, which I work with the Chino Police Department, and as well as the marketing at nationalcert.org. I'm the person in the National Cert Association that kind of deals with a lot of our marketing and social media currently. So if you see that, or if you, for some reason, chat with us on the NCA website, or on our social media, it's typically me that's responding until we get somebody else to help me with that. So I'll open it up for any questions that we might have. Formal adoptions, and good question. So have I seen any formal adoptions in our organization? It's coming. It's a little slow. So our city, we have 6 IT people for my city, and we're not a small city, but our organization is a little slow when it comes to IT. So there are a lot of individual users that are using AI. However, our city is still working on an AI policy, which I've been told that they are working on currently, so that we can be able to use, more enterprise systems to have that. And what does that look like? So we are looking at, I know there are some other agencies around here that do use Microsoft Copilot, and have those enterprise systems that are closed off. But we're not quite there yet, unfortunately. Good question. Okay, yeah. So the use policy is the big thing that they're working on. Yep.
Well, thank you, Denise. Does anyone have any other questions? This is your opportunity to ask some pointed questions about this topic. We had a couple questions come in offline.
Okay.
So where do you see AI in the next 2 to 3 years?
Oh, good question. I'm not an AI expert, but I will say that when it comes to AI, it's integrating more and more into our daily lives, and into everything that we see and hear. And so um, when you start to play with AI, I will say I think you start to spot it easier. So you can see it when someone types something into a chat or responds to a post on social media. Or I don't know if you guys, how many of you have Facebook, but on Facebook, a lot of times in the CERT forums, there are AI bots that are there that are generating these questions. And you can tell because of their name. But even if you couldn't tell because of their name, you could tell because of how they write. So you'll see a lot of that with that. So I think it's just going to continue to grow and change, and some of that is really scary, quite frankly. I love sci-fi, and I've watched and read a lot of the artificial intelligence books that could keep you up at night, and I hope that those things don't necessarily come to fruition. But like I said, as it stands right now, it is a hot topic, and it is something that we as CERT program coordinators or volunteers or instructors, we can use it as a powerful tool to enhance our programs if used correctly. I don't know if any of you guys are Spider-Man fans or Marvel fans, but Peter Parker's uncle told him, with great power comes great responsibility. And I say with AI, that is the same thing. It has a lot of power, and there's still a lot of responsibility on our end to be mindful of when we're using it as that tool. Use it for good, not evil. No deep fakes.
Do you have any experience with AI in the retail industry or restaurant industry?
No, I'm not exactly sure what that question is alluding to and how. I mean, other than in if I need customer service support, I've seen a lot of that. But I'm not 100% sure without specifics. No, I haven't really dealt with it.
Okay. And the last question we had, what pilot project would you recommend starting within a CERT program and utilizing AI?
Oh, um, so for those of us who have the volunteer, well, there's two ways I could see it. So one is how do you enhance your basic curriculum using AI, whether it's creating new exercises or activities to enhance, or you could create images potentially. Again, make sure that it looks. I would use real incidents before I use AI generated images. But that would be like a start on the basic side, and then kind of continuing on for your volunteer program. Really, again, I use it for exercises and activities, and I love puns. So anything that I can make punny, I do. So a lot of times I'll ask it to generate themes or generate, quirky sayings. I don't use it for all of my writing, but I'll ask it for some of that just to give me something a little bit more creative than what's spinning in my brain. I know what wants to come out, but with that writer's block, I don't always think as fast, and it does it so quickly.
Mhm. So for the folks in this webinar and who have been a part of our past webinars and have watched them on YouTube, I use Canva to package these webinars with the credits in the beginning and the credits at the end and the music. So I'm familiar with Canva on that side of it. I haven't used the AI part of it. I've just used the where you put sections of video together. Um, so I'm going to try and see what else I could use it for.
Yeah.
There's a couple questions in chat, Denise.
Yeah. So can it be used in or out in the field documentation? Um, I, off the top of my head, I would say probably not at this time. I guess it would depend on what you're doing, but I don't think so. I'm a pen and paper gal, but like you can use other programs, right? You can have electronic versions, of the survey that's not an AI, based out of ChatGPT or anything like that. So there are other programs and other software that you can use that's not AI generated. I would probably use that. And again, depending on what your field documenting, whether it's a real life scenario or a fake scenario, my real life scenario, again, if you don't have those policies in place and you don't have that protected um, enterprise, I wouldn't necessarily use it for that because, right, that's personal protected information that we would like, and I don't necessarily want to feed that to AI. What is the best training that you've used AI for? So I've used AI for continuing education trainings mainly. So crafting additional exercises for my CERT volunteers, my CERT team to use incident command system forms or the CERT forms, whichever one you use. I will say, so we use the CERT forms. I'm gonna actually stop sharing this. Let me go to my chat GPT. So if you look at a lot of the chats that I have, a lot of them are dealing with CERT. But one of the ones that I did was we had a CERT meeting last week, and I was trying to craft a CERT exercise, a CERT forms exercise for them, utilizing an exercise. And unfortunately, it took a few tries because it didn't know what I was pulling. So it was pulling some ICS forms, and AI. I didn't really talk about this, but it will hallucinate. So what I mean by hallucinate is if it doesn't know information, it'll make it up. And so again, it has these 201s, 214, right? Those are ICS forms. Most of those are corresponding to, specific ICS forms. I've never seen, insert basic curriculum, those particular forms. So it kind of made that information up, right? And then I said, no, 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 no. I need you to do no, I need you to use the CERT forms, right? And I said, create this scenario to address CERT forms 1 through 8. Well, it still didn't know what I was asking. And so it regenerated this, and then it created a whole nother list of CERT forms. And again, that didn't correspond with the CERT forms that I was referring to. It wasn't until I populated it with that it was able to give me some information. And so again, what I tend to do is you can copy and paste directly from ChatGPT and some of these other AI platforms, but I typically don't download directly from them. I just pull information that I want or need. Yes, you can upload the forms to AI, and would you recommend that? That's exactly what I did. The CERT forms are publicly available. There's nothing sensitive to what comes with it. Same thing with the basic training manual, whether that's the participant manual or the instructor manual. Feed it. It's fine, right? It's publicly accessible. Anything that's specific to your organization, though, you might not necessarily want to do that. Yes, those are ICS forms, not the 214 is a ICS form, not a CERT form. So, sometimes even in our EOC, we change ICS to EOC for the same form. That is essentially what this ChatGPT is doing in this instance, but we don't necessarily, I don't think all programs do that. So we've done that. Yes, useful to create standard operating procedures. I've done that as well, to kind of create an outline or a template. I will say, so since I was on the planning committee for the CERT conference last year, I used a lot of it for creative writing, but also because our CERT conferences are still we're still getting our foundation established and getting other states to host conferences and stuff. We were trying to build some of the foundational documents. So I used it a lot for checklists and to create position descriptions for the various conference roles. So you can see here, I had create a job description and position checklist for a sponsorship and exhibitor chair for a CERT conference. So again, it generated a potential job description, and what are some of the things that they oversee, and what are the qualifications that they should have, and a position checklist. And I use this as a foundation. I didn't take it as true and correct. I went through, I downloaded it, I tweaked it a bit, and that way we had a starting point. And you can do the same thing with your standard operating procedures. Right now, I have a big project for my emergency operations plan for my city and updating. You bet that I'm not going to stick my EOP into ChatGPT, but I will ask it to help me develop some templates in addition to looking at other cities and towns and counties to see what it looks like and where I can beg, borrow, and steal to get me through that finish line. So yeah, those are good things. I again try to keep more personal stuff out of here. I have done a little bit of personal stuff in here, but for the most part, I try to keep my ChatGPT pretty clean of its emergency management related activities or tasks. And so again, with images, let me show you what I did this morning. So the snow capital one. So again, Michael provided me some images that I was able to then generate photos for. I will say, so with ChatGPT, it's free, which is great. I mean, there is a paid version that's even better, is my understanding, than the free version. It does allow you to do images, and it does allow you to summarize data, but there are limits. They don't tell you what the daily limits are, but when you hit it, it will tell you, sorry, we can't do this, try again tomorrow. So there are limitations to even the free version, but one of the reasons why I use ChatGPT a lot is because it seems to have a bigger bandwidth. I can do a lot more, but I will say I've noticed whenever I'm generating images or I'm trying to summarize a large portion of data, it doesn't like that on the free version. So if you have the paid version, I don't think you have the same limitations. But the free version, I've noticed, I've actually had it create logos for me. So if those of you paid any attention to National CERT Week that we did this year, and it was, every community needs a certain kind of hero. That image, the superhero image portion of it, was utilized using ChatGPT. And all I did was I asked for a silhouette image of two superheroes, a man and a woman or something like that. And then I got that image that I was able to then take into Canva and then did my own manipulation from there. I think those are some of the things. And tabletop exercises. So if you're creating tabletop exercises for your CERT team to kind of walk through, again, helping to build out those scenarios and think about things that maybe you might not have thought of. Again, it's a perfect brainstorming tool for a lot of that. So those things. Trying to find the CERT week theme. So there was CERT week themes. I asked it to come up with CERT week themes, come up with the toolkit that we created for the CERT, National CERT Week. A lot of those ideas were generated from AI. So here was the logo I was talking about. So I said, create an image of silhouettes of a male and female superhero with the word CERT written across their chest, have them in a superhero pose. That's what it generated for me. And then I asked it to spit out as an EPS file of the image for me to download. It did that for me. And then I was able to take it into other design programs and go from there. But I don't know if there's any other questions or if there's anything else people want to see done. I could try and do
There was
something.
one question from Dan about identifying when you've
Oh,
used AI and
uh-huh.
if that's something that should be done, or is that a policy, or
Yeah. That would be a policy decision by your organization. And um, since we don't have one right now, we haven't. Again, my content is not used 100% as that. And so I typically don't cite it as AI in my documentation. And again, I'm not using it in official publications for the most part. I'm using it in like tabletop exercise discussions and ways to generate ideas. So I don't think I necessarily have to cite for that. I could be wrong. But I don't typically. Now, if I'm using images in an exercise, I'll let people know, hey, this was generated by AI. I'm very transparent when it comes to that. But we didn't do that for the National CERT Conference for National CERT Week. We didn't put that this image was generated partially through AI. You're welcome about the photo editing and the dog one. That, like I said, that was one of the first ones. I died laughing, especially because they gave her a bandana, just like my dog had a bandana. And then of course, changing myself into the dog, I laughed even harder because apparently I can't write that prompt very well. So.
Well, thank you so much, Denise, for kicking us off for 2026. I hope everyone enjoyed today's webinar. Like I said, it's recorded and it'll be packaged hopefully tomorrow, Monday, and put on YouTube for everyone to enjoy. So for everyone joining us today, you'll need to log back into CT Train and complete your evaluation, and you'll be able to redeem your certificate. So thanks again, Denise, for kicking us off, and talk soon, and hope everyone enjoyed this webinar.
Yes. And please look out for the handout. I think the handout is a nice little tip sheet.
Yeah, I will attach the handout to an email later today, and then also it'll be attached to the CT Train